Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, Jessica Ray.
Thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to MotorWeek podcast number 314. I'm your host, Jessica Ray, filling in today for John Davis. And the Tesla Cybertruck is finally here. In today's podcast, we'll dig into the details of what we know about Tesla's first pickup truck, including an additional $20,000 starting price from what they had originally said.
Shocker.
And then we're going to move over to General Motors, who are keeping the Buick brand alive with an affordable and incredibly stylish crossover, the Envista. Plus, Chevrolet's next generations of EVs are here with their slick new Blazer EV. Our lightning round will address the return of new vehicle incentives, and a viewer has a question about buttons in cars disappearing. Now, joining me today are two-wheeling reporter Brian Robinson.
Hello, everyone.
And writer Alex Kellum.
Howdy.
These are the two guys who pretty much write most of what you hear on the show.
Yep, we click some words into the computer. And
I sit at my silly little desk, hitting the silly little buttons to write the silly little words.
All right. So let's get started on our first topic. 4 years after it was revealed, Tesla has finally made the first few customer deliveries of their polarizing but much anticipated Cybertruck. The Cybertruck is the brand's first foray into the pickup truck space with revolutionary design and engineering. There are estimates that over 1 million people have put a deposit down for a Cybertruck reservation. Wow. Now that we have the details, Alex, what do we know about what we can buy?
Yes, it's the highly anticipated, the stainless steel and the baseball impact resistant Cybertruck.
And guns. I think they shot some
there
guns
was something
at
about
it
some
as well.
guns in there. Yeah, they talked
Some
about
bullets.
hail, but you know what other American ways to qualify that? Baseball, guns, and I guess hail. But yeah, so this is the 2024 and technically 2025 Cybertruck because there are 3 trims that have been announced. 2 of them, they're both all-wheel drive. That's 2024. The rear-wheel drive, which will be the cheaper of them, and get to prices in a little bit, that will be coming in 2025. So for those million, for whatever the million
those who wanted that
yeah,
base
if you want the rear-wheel drive, you're waiting a little
one.
bit longer.
Yes.
But that's you're probably okay with that. Now, regardless of the trim, they are all basically the same size, and I think that's an important place to start just to get over how big it is. Because you look at some pictures and you're like, wow, that thing's huge. And in other pictures, maybe not so much. So to actually put it into numbers, it's about 18 feet long, or a little over 18 feet, 223 inches, if you want to be exact.
Okay.
How does that compare? Is it like full size or mid size or?
Full size. I'm going to get to. I have some comparisons. I'm going to make. You jumping the gun here.
Right.
We're too
I'm
excited.
Go back to my computer and start clicking on some numbers.
Yeah, so it's 95 inches wide, 70 inches tall, or just over 70 inches tall, 17 and a half inches of ground clearance, or up to with the extract mode. So that's not what it's always going to ride with, but that's what you can get.
Because it does have like it does have an air suspension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a 4-door with a 6-foot bed, which usually with like 4-door trucks, I feel like we're seeing 5 or 5.5 foot bed. And again, I have some comparisons. But weight, it's heavy.
Yeah.
Weighs about 6,600 pounds, up to 6,800 pounds, depending on which trim you
much
get.
less than the Hummer.
Yeah.
And despite it looking, as Professor Farnsworth would put it, about as aerodynamic as a sofa, it's actually not too bad. A drag coefficient of 0.39. At least that's what they're advertising, I believe. Some people are saying it's a little bit higher, but I'm not an engineer, believe it or not, so I couldn't tell you.
That's our best guess.
But it's apparently not too bad. You get 67 cubic feet of lockable storage, and I believe that includes the front. And the trunk has like a vault bed cover that comes down. You can lock that up, and payload is 2,500 pounds. So how does this stack up to its competitors? Well, I think the best comparison is probably to the GMC EV pickup. The Hummer. I probably should have put Hummer in there. I said everything else but Hummer. Yeah, it's the Hummer. Didn't get a lot of sleep last night. So that thing is 217 inches long, so a little bit shorter. It's 94 inches wide, so about the same. Ground clearance, it's up to about 16 inches with their own extract mode. This thing weighs, however, 9,000 pounds, and that's because it has a larger battery pack, I believe 213 kilowatt hour. When they first released the Cybertruck stats, I could not find the battery capacity anywhere. Supposedly, documents given out to the EPA very recently have put it at 122.4 kilowatt hours.
That's like a pretty significant difference.
Right, but Tesla has always done more with less. Their batteries are always smaller, but I'm not an engineer also, but supposedly the connectors and all the wiring is more next level than what you'll find in anyone else. That's why they get the additional range, specifically the connectors and stuff.
That size is probably close in comparison to what like the battery pack we see in like the F-150 Lightning. That's about close.
And for the record, I'm not sure if that battery is going to then go over to the rear-wheel drive model.
Right.
But to speak to that, and also to compare it to the Rivian, Rivian's like 217 inches long. Rivian only gets a 4.5-foot bed. The Hummer gets like a 5-foot bed. So the Cybertruck definitely has like a little bit more in terms of like space, or at least if you want to look at volume. It weighs a little bit less, or I guess a lot less if you want to look, maybe a whole car less, I suppose. But yeah, so we'll get into range and pricing, especially when you compare it to that, because the Hummer EV starts a little over $100,000. So I guess fortunately, you tease the price a little bit.
Yeah.
If you go on the Cybertruck, I guess the builder, for lack of a better word, you're not really building it, but you can select your trim. They list two prices. There's the like what it's going to cost you up front. So for the rear-wheel drive, that's going to be, I believe, $60,000. But then they'll list what is a probable savings cost, which is they put it at 49 and some change. It's basically 50 grand. I don't know exactly what goes into that calculation, but I would assume it's
like
it's two things. It's
stuff.
tax rebates and potential fuel cost
That's
savings.
what I
So
figured.
they put like an additional like almost $3,000 of fuel savings into that. So yes, but even still, they had originally said that it was going to be about $40,000 for the base. Now, granted, this was 4 years ago. A lot has changed in 4 years.
So how can we come up with numbers that at least get it close to that, right?
Yeah, and also at the same time, we don't know if in 2025 when these for the 2025 model year for the rear-wheel drive version of the Cybertruck, we don't even know possibly like if they will have that tax incentive. That does seem to change every year.
Right.
So, and that's the full tax incentive of $7,500. So
Yeah.
you possibly might be able to get the price lower, but you also at the same time might not. So we're going to say a price of $60,000 or $61,000 to start.
Yeah, and that again, that's coming in 2025. So if you're looking for 2024, it's two all-wheel drive variants.
Is the Cyber Beast, is that tri-motor?
I believe it is. Yes.
Yeah. But does that have a difference between the dual two-motor all-wheel drive? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Because usually we think like all-wheel drive, we think dual motor.
You think of a dual motor.
Well, the Hummer
front and
also
aft.
has three motors, right? Got two in back and one in front.
So they're both all-wheel drive, but the Cyber Beast is three motors, and then the normal all-wheel drive one has two motors. Is that what we're thinking?
Actually, I'm not entirally sure. I was under the impression they were all tri-motor setup, but I could be wrong in that. So would you
This
believe
is also
it?
just like it's tough because Tesla doesn't have a PR.
They don't want you to know too much about it.
So we're kind of working with
believe it
what
or not,
Write
we've
us a check,
seen.
buy the coolest thing on the road right now,
Yeah.
and then we'll all be happy. Don't ask too many questions.
Yeah, so for the two models you can get this year, the aptly named all-wheel drive, which has either 2 or 3 motors, one of those, you're looking at 340 miles of range or up to 470 with an available range extender. And what that is it's basically a big box that gets installed into the bed up close to the wall all the way towards the cabin. So you do lose a little space, but you get a lot of miles out of it.
And that's just a bigger battery, or what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's just an
It's not
additional
just a
battery.
box,
It's an accessory
it's actually,
battery.
Yeah.
Can you use it for like plug into it and stuff like that too, or is it strictly?
I don't know if you
power
can
the vehicle?
I don't know if you can plug directly into that box, but
Gotcha.
there is like a
V2L.
vehicle to
Vehicle to
load
load.
system where if you want to like your house or like appliances or things like that, they have like PR photos of like work guys in high vis vests like sawing things and plugging.
Yeah, they have like the option to get like a 240 volt.
Yeah. So you know if you know your fleet, whatever company you work for, is buying Cybertrucks, there you go. You can operate your Sawzall wherever you are.
It's a truck.
Yeah, it do be a truck. And then the all-wheel drive 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds, 11,000 pounds of towing. That one's going to start at $80,000, and that's before the probable savings. And then we've already said the name, the fantastical Cyber Beast. This one's rated at 320 miles of range or 440 with the range extender. So you lose a little bit of range, but you get theoretically a whole bunch more performance, specifically a 0 to 60 time in 2.6 seconds, which is very fast, stupid fast even. Top speed is 130 miles per hour. The all-wheel drive, it's 120, so if that matters to you, there it is. Towing still 11,000 pounds, and this one is going to start at a cool 100 grand, or 99 and some change if you want to split hairs.
Right.
The interior, if you're not familiar with Tesla interiors, I mean, like EVs in general are very minimalist, but Tesla is arguably like at the top of minimalism. There is
steering wheel and a tablet.
Yep, you get a tablet. It's 18.5 inches. There is a screen in the back for your passengers, 9.5 inches. Got a panoramic moonroof, sunroof, whatever you want to call it. It's glass. I can't figure out if this is a bit, but on the website, on the builder, it lists a bioweapon defense mode, which I don't know if that's just a funny way of saying they do put a HEPA filter in there that filters out like 99% of germs, or if it's really called bioweapon defense mode. There's a part of me that hopes it is, because that is hilarious. But I'm sure it's not. It's just a filter. So...
Wow.
That is basically everything you need to know about the Cybertruck.
Well, there's also two other things that are kind of interesting about the Cybertruck when we talk about like revolutionary design, but specifically revolutionary engineering. And the Cybertruck comes with steer-by-wire, which I think it must be the first production model in the U.S. to do so. I believe Lexus has developed a system.
Has it, yeah, but it's not out.
It's not here yet. So, Brian, can you tell us a little bit more about steer-by-wire?
It's basically, if you play video games, it's essentially that, right?
Story of my life.
You just have a joystick, not necessarily a joystick, but there's no mechanical connection between the steering wheel and the wheels.
Electrical.
Just a wire going down there telling the wheels what to do.
Yes. So there is no mechanical linkage.
Right.
It's just electrical, which
if a mouse chews through that wire, like is known to happen at my house, since all covering is now vegetable based, animals like to eat them, then you won't have any steering.
Which we have seen like a lot of drive-by-wire. Cars are kind of becoming by-wire if we think of like shifting. Shifting has kind of become shift-by-wire as we've seen shifters kind of move away from like a traditional shifter.
Right, throttle pedals as well.
Same sort of thing. So that's kind of where we're at with this. So that's kind of revolutionary. We haven't seen another vehicle have this before, and this could certainly start a trend, certainly in EVs. And I should mention too that steer-by-wire is commonly used in vehicles with like four-wheel steering. They use steer-by-wire specifically for the rear wheels.
Right.
So like the Hummer EV that we were talking about earlier, that has steer-by-wire specifically for its like crab walk mode and stuff like that.
And airplanes been using it for years, and they seem to stay in the air for the most part.
Yes,
and steer
true.
once they get down and on the runway. So.
Right.
Fortunately, the rodents aren't chewing through those wires.
Right.
I think we're good.
And then we also have something that's really interesting, a 48-volt system in the Cybertruck. There is no 12-volt battery in this. All of the electronics, even the steer-by-wire system, work on only the 48-volt system, which at the same time, I think this must be one of the first. I can't say if it's the first, but one of the first.
We've certainly had 48-volt systems in cars for quite a while. A lot of, if your vehicle has an active suspension, stop-start system, chances are it's got a 48-volt system in there. But the basic architecture with the battery for powering accessories is still 12-volt.
Right. And we have used a 12-volt for about 70 years now in
50s,
cars.
Yeah, 60s went from 6 to 12 volt,
and then
now we're going from 12 to 48.
Yeah,
just a matter of time.
It's kind of incredible that it has not changed in 70 years, something like that. Thinking about how dramatically cars have changed in 70 years.
Yeah, I mean, we're putting more and more electronics, more and more stressors on that system. So yeah, it's just a matter of time.
Complex wiring.
Yeah.
And if you've heard us ever talk about mild hybrid systems, that's exactly what we're talking about with the 48 volt system. That it's the same thing. Essentially, what it does is just helps alleviate other processes and kind of makes vehicles more efficient. They're actually not that expensive to put into cars, but the problem is you have every single vehicle on the market that is suited for a 12 volt. All the little electric components have been made for 12 volt for so long that nobody has wanted to take the time and expense to switch all of that over to a 48 volt system. So even though it would probably be better for the consumer, it's just quite a big process to happen. And that's kind of why we have not seen it so far make its way. But that's why this vehicle could be potentially so revolutionary, is that it could start a trend that, all right, all the automakers are like, well, if Tesla's doing it, I guess we should probably get there. Possibly.
Yeah, certainly for EVs. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. That was
absolutely
really enlightening.
Oh, are we done?
We are. Are we? Do you have more to say?
Oh, no. I just didn't know.
What do you think of the Cybertruck?
I'm out. Well, we can't leave yet.
Oh, no. Okay.
We have something that you're going to talk about a little bit next.
We're
We're going to move on to a very, very different vehicle, something much more traditional. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, you may have missed that Buick is now an all SUV brand.
Crazy, right?
No more new LeSabres or Regals prowling American streets. But they've since pivoted to being an SUV brand, and their newest model is one of the most cost-effective entry-level crossovers that money can buy. And it looks even better than its starting price. Brian, we had it here in Maryland for a few weeks of testing. Can you tell us about it?
I did probably drive it more than anyone else.
I actually didn't even mention the name in that intro.
Well, hey, you got to save something for me.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So what is it called,
We are
Brian?
talking about the Buick Envista. And it is very small, but not as small as the Encore GX.
Yes.
But it is priced to start at $24,000. We'll put that right up there to start with. That's it's cheaper than the Encore GX.
Yeah, it's weird. It's small. It's larger than the Encore GX, but slots underneath of it. There is a reason for that, which we can talk about.
Yeah. So it's essentially much like the Encore when it debuted, is the Buick version of the Chevrolet Trax. It's got if you look through the specs, you think it's got to be the most boring vehicle in the world. It's got a 1.2 liter i3, front wheel drive only.
6-speed automatic.
Yeah, so
But a true automatic.
It is a true automatic.
But when you see it, it's by far the most gorgeous Buick that we've seen in years. They really went all out with the styling, trying to make an impact. I mentioned in the road test where almost every SUV we get in now looks more rugged than before and has an off-road package. Like, they went the opposite direction. They're just trying to make the most gorgeous SUV on the road, and it certainly is close. It's kind of hard to describe, just very sleek looking, sits really low. They're not worried about pumping up the ground clearance. It looks more like a hatchback, really tall rear,
right?
Big grille up front, minimal lighting, like you barely even see where the headlights and taillights are.
It's really sleek. And actually, I think a lot of people are, saw pictures of it and were like, "You're calling that an SUV?"
Yeah, for sure.
It kind of toes the line. It's just like a little taller, I'd say, than like a Crown.
Yeah, and but it really, I wasn't so sure, but seeing it in person, it really is nice looking, and it draws a crowd. I mean, driving down the road, people were like, trying to find out what it was. I was very surprised by that, but.
And driving, what was it like to drive?
Yeah, it's quiet. It's definitely quieter than the Trax. They've done some tuning in there. It drives great. The low power numbers, 137 horsepower, but like a lot of small turbos, it gets off the line plenty quick.
Right.
It's once you get up there, 60, 70, and you want to try to pass someone, that's when you'll be wanting more horsepower. But scooting around town, which even Buick calls it an urban type vehicle, so scooting around town, it feels plenty powerful despite those small numbers. It's built in both South Korea and China. Supposedly the ones that we're getting are all coming from South Korea, but that could certainly change. So you get you get the base Envista, pretty well equipped for 24, but then you can go sporty with an ST line, comes with all the sporty trim, no more power or anything like that. Or you can go luxury with the Avenir, which is what we had in, granted. But even that fully loaded was right at $30,000, just under $30,000. So, and that gets a nicer rear suspension setup, gets a Watts link added,
which is kind of significant. I do think it certainly more comfortable, like on the highway.
Yeah, it's made the smooth the ride out. Yeah, a little more substantial back there. All in all, a great effort. But at this, it's just a Buick. It's just hard to people to wrap their heads around it, especially at that price where you're comparing yourself with like the Hyundai Konas of the world,
right?
Subaru Crosstrek. It's like, do I want to buy a Crosstrek or can I get this really luxurious Buick?
Especially with the off-road fads and everything,
right?
People may lean more towards those rugged and off-road trimmed.
Yeah, Buick has been going after that elusive, active young buyer for years and years and years. This is definitely their best effort yet. We'll see how it does.
I think one of the things I like about specifically the Envista, but also some the other trends with GM is that the interior, a lot of what you get inside, you get on the base model, and then you also get on the top trim. So like the screen, it has a really nice screen in the Envista. In the interior itself, even the base Envista is very nice, and you get a really nice like dynamic screen, and you can even get that in the cheapest version. Whereas like if you want to get a Corolla Cross, you get a smaller screen if you get the base model versus you get the nice screen in the top of the line model. So I really like that aspect of it. Alex, did you get to spend much time in it, or you spent a lot of time in the tracks?
I did spend a lot of time in the tracks, and I will say that's why I pointed out the transmission, because it's not a lot of horsepower, but the way that they have like if you look at the performance curve, I don't know. I feel like you're right there in the sweet spot most of the time at like, I think if I got it right, it's like around 2,000 RPM, somewhere in that neighborhood. You're kind of always in that area. So when you have to kind of get up and go, it's not as bad as, 137 horsepower it may make you think that it is. But no, to me, the Envista is like the perfect embodiment of, I'm pretty sure it was Buick that did those commercials years ago where it's like, they're on the phone. It's like, oh, I'm outside in the Buick, and the person's looking around. They're like, yeah, I'm right here. And it's like, that's not a Buick. Right. To me, that is 100% what the Envista is. It's like this very, very like attractive, very. I don't know if classy is quite the right word, but,
I think it's classy,
compared to the rugged and the all that kind of stuff that we see, I would say it's definitely classy. So it's that embodiment of like this is them further reshaping their image, and I believe that could also be a little bit of juxtaposition there to the tri-shield on the front. It's new on the Envista.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
There's no longer the
circle.
Like circle. It's less of a proper badge, and
it's basically just the shields at this point. So
I think as well as the Envista, it gets this new design language that we really haven't seen from Buick before. But they've also given that same front end to the Encore GX, which got a little bit of a refresh for 24 as well. And the thing is with the Envista, it's front wheel drive only. So if you want all wheel drive, you do have to step up to the Encore GX because that does have optional all-wheel drive. But it's such a great,
or just get some winter
package.
tires and you'll be
That's
fine.
right. Yeah.
But and one other thing I didn't mention, the wheelbase is definitely stretched to the max, which obviously helps the styling, but it also puts close to mid-size space in the rear seat. There's a lot of space in the rear seat. So.
And it has this sloping roof line to it, but if you look at the headliner, it's sort of bumped out so that taller passengers can be a little bit more comfortable back there. Even though when you look outside, you're like, oh gosh, I have to get into that thing. But if you well, I don't know. You guys are tall, so I'm imagining that's probably what you're thinking if you have to sit in the back seat of something with like a sloped roof line. But they're really smart in how it was all engineered. So I think it's definitely an impressive little package. So, yeah. Well, thank you guys for that nice little chat about the Envista. We are also going to talk about another new GM product, the long-awaited Blazer EV, but we're going to hold that till a little bit later on in the show. Now, before we move on, I also want to thank the sponsors of this podcast and of the show MotorWeek, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and TireRack.com. We know our viewers and listeners appreciate your dedication to MotorWeek. Now, let's move on to our lightning round. Traditionally, our panelists have 30 seconds to give their take on a trending automotive topic. And guess what, everybody? Guess what we found? We found our bell. So I actually can do it for like 30 seconds.
You can stop, sending all the emails and letters and telegrams. And we found the bell.
We have the bell. So now, all right. So today, according to Kelley Blue Book, new vehicle sales incentives were up 136% year over year in November, indicating that the new vehicle market is shifting to a buyer's market and not a seller's market. Do you think this will be a reprieve for buyers who have been biding their time wanting to buy a new vehicle? Alex.
I'm going to take a very aggressive and hard-hitting answer on this, maybe. And what I mean by that is, while incentives are always good and they will help people get into cars, and especially we're seeing markups, drop and things like that. Yeah, I'm looking
hiding
at the clock.
He's looking at the timer.
I get time back for that.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's. At the end of the day, it's still, for some people, sticker shock how much cars cost. You compare that to how much people are bringing home, how much they have to spend on other things. Yeah, it is technically shifting towards a buyer's market, I guess, because of that, but stuff's still pricey.
Way to be a downer, man.
Wow.
If I had more time, I'd be more positive. You get 30 seconds of me, it's going to be negative.
Well, no, you do have a point there. And Brian?
I'm ready. Okay, so when it comes to car dealers, it's very similar to going to Vegas. Like, you may win every once in a while, but the house always wins, right? Mm-hmm. So there are some good deals to be had out there, but if you're looking for something like really new, recently redone, like a Telluride, you're not getting any deals. But if you want to pick up that Corolla that's been sitting on the lot for 6 months, there's definitely incentives for that. Vehicles like that, you're just not going to get any deals on the latest and greatest.
Wow, good job.
The lame bell ring for my lame comment.
It got stuck.
I get it.
The bell was certainly hidden somewhere and not kept in the world's best shape. But no, I think, both of you make some really good points. I think personally, for buyers who...
start the timer.
Oh, sorry.
Well, she's the host. She's not... She makes the rules. She's not constrained by the rules. Yeah.
I was just
for thee and not for me. All right. Okay.
But I think buyers are at a point now where maybe like deals aren't the best. There are incentives, yes. Interest rates are still pretty high. So I think incentives, like when it comes to interest rates, like for example, things that they want to move off the lot, you can get a really good interest rate for. And I think just overall people buying cars now will be less underwater than they have in the last probably 2.5, 3 years. I think that's just been a big problem. People paying for markups because they maybe didn't have a choice, needed a car immediately. So I think this is certainly good overall. We're also seeing trends down with the average transaction cost that has went down a little bit.
Yeah, used prices are coming back down, thankfully.
Correct. So. Yeah. So we are seeing, it's been a long time, but we are seeing trends downward on pricing across the board. So that is a good thing for those who might be looking to buy a new car. Well, thank you guys. Wow, it was so cool to be able to do that like properly with our little bell.
Or as properly as we could.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to our viewer question. This is an email from Luke. Why are car makers replacing physical buttons with touchscreen controls? It seems like a safety issue.
Luke, they're doing it to spite you specifically.
Yeah.
No, I'm
every
just kidding.
customer. No, but not why, but maybe close.
Well,
It's
I
not.
don't
It's certainly
know.
not for the consumer
I'll be
benefit.
honest. I do not know why they are doing it. Aside from the fact that we are living in the future and everything is going to be haptic and whatnot. Is it a safety issue? Yeah, I can see for certain controls, especially. Yeah, I think so. There's something, kind of like being able to feel from memory, like, okay, this is my tuner dial, this is my HVAC control. One could argue you shouldn't manipulate those controls when you're driving anyway, but I think if you can feel it and whatever, that's certainly better than just a flat piece of plastic or like wood trim or something.
No
that
feedback.
You touch. Yeah. Or there is feedback, but you don't get the feedback until you've already activated the thing. So it could certainly be a safety issue. I agree.
As far as why they're doing it, I can't speak for all car makers, but generally they make their decisions based on cost, convenience, and wow factor, right? So it's cheaper to do. Just run. You don't have to have physical knobs. Just it's a new thing for the touchscreen. It's convenient as well. You can have more storage options in the dash, stuff like that. And nothing impresses people more than a giant screen in the middle of the dashboard. So
Yeah.
I was totally just thinking haptic controls there. I wasn't even thinking about the touchscreen controls, which is what this is probably really talking about.
So, but is it really a safety issue? I'm not so sure. It's definitely a frustration issue. There's times when you may not want to. You want to adjust something, but you don't want to take your eyes off the road to do it, so you don't do it. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's a safety issue.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing more manufacturers like Ford, a lot of their climate. I think what bothers most people is climate controls being in the touchscreen, just because like people are always futzing with those.
Yeah,
right?
and it's worth noting that there are good touch sensitive controls and there are bad ones. If I can reach over there at a quick glance and tap it and it works, then I have no problem with that. If I have to fiddle with it, slide it up and down and wait for it to respond and then move it around a couple more times to get what I want, then that's not a great touch system.
You don't want to menu dive for relatively simplistic functions.
Right.
There's also a lot of voice activated stuff now, which if it's integrated properly is nice. Sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes it misrecognizes you or whatever. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Great point. So I hope that answers your question, Luke. If you would like to submit your own question for us to answer here on the podcast, send an email to motorweek@pbs.org or reach out to us on any of our social media platforms. Thanks, guys. Now, we'll talk about, I teased this a little bit before, the Blazer EV. So Chevrolet, they're no stranger to electric vehicles, and they've been mass producing EVs since 2011 with the beloved Volt, and later still with the popular Bolt EV that they currently make now. But they are lagging behind other brands on the quest for emissions-free vehicles. But that is until now. Chevy's long-awaited Blazer EV is finally here, and I was recently able to be one of the first people to drive it out in Southern California. So the interesting thing is I kind of wish I had driven the Cadillac Lyriq, which the Blazer is kin with, that Brian here.
Well, you drove the Hummer EV. It's kin to that.
I guess it's true. That's a good point. Yeah, because the Blazer EV is built on the, GM's Ultium platform, which is essentially just like a skateboard chassis with a bunch of, they use the same battery tech, just in different sizes. Essentially, that's what the Ultium platform is. And so you might also know the Blazer nameplate because it is a very historic name from Chevrolet, GM specifically. And it also, they brought it back in 2019, I think.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
2018, 2019 as like this
sportier version of an SUV.
Yeah, like this crossover. Certainly nothing like its original roots as like a real off-roader.
K5 Silverado truck based. Yeah.
But so the Blazer EV actually shares nothing with the internal combustion engine sibling, if you want to call it. It shares nothing but name. I mean, really, that's it. It's on a completely new platform. It looks completely different. It's larger, it's longer, it's sleeker. It's I will have to say, it's much better looking than the current Blazer. So it really shares nothing, and it has EV tagged at the end of its name. So as you can guess, it's all electric. So what's interesting about it too is that it comes in 3 different configurations for motor. So it comes in a front-wheel drive configuration, a rear-wheel drive configuration, and what they is an all-wheel drive configuration, but they call it E all-wheel drive. Because mostly with the all-wheel drive version, it has a large motor in the front and a small motor in the rear. And essentially what the small motor in the rear is doing is it's just assisting when it needs to. So it really is tiny. And when you're just driving just along the highway in just normal driving situation, it feels like a front-wheel drive car, which was very interesting. But then, of course, if you want to, if you get into like a rougher situation, or you do it, on a curve, you do start to feel that rear motor start working and having more of an all-wheel drive driving experience. So it was very interesting. I was able to drive the rear-wheel drive version as well. And the way that Chevy is doing this is different than when I had previously talked about the EX30, the Volvo EX30. So the all-wheel drive version is dual motor, we know this, but it is less powerful than the single motor rear-wheel drive version. So the all-wheel drive version gets about 285, 87 horsepower, whereas the rear-wheel drive version gets 340 horsepower. So there's like a significant difference on paper, there's a significant difference in power. But in practice, the all-wheel drive version is more torquey than the rear-wheel drive version. So the way that it kind of puts out the power is not like a huge significant difference. And like I said, I drove the Volvo EX30 and it's completely separate. The dual motor, because you have 2 motors, is more powerful than just the single motor version. I like the all-wheel drive version a lot. It also gets a smaller battery pack. It gets an 85 kilowatt hour battery pack. So your range is not quite as good. You're kind of looking at like 280 miles of range. Whereas the rear-wheel drive version gets the larger battery pack, 100.
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad. It gets 102 kilowatts for the rear-wheel drive, but that'll get you like 320 miles of range. So. But we've seen that the Altium is pretty efficient. So, and Chevrolet's estimates are based on not even, I don't think, being in like one pedal driving. So it's not even like it's at its most efficient. So if you can hypermile and get probably more than what they're estimating. But overall, I mean, it drove nicely. It drove exactly how I expected a Chevrolet to drive. It was just a really nice, smooth driving experience. And what was kind of refreshing about it too was that you have almost 300 horsepower in the all-wheel drive version and over 300 horsepower in the rear drive version, and but it's not like push you back in your seat sort of like acceleration.
Yeah, we've been seeing that with a lot of EVs now. Like, that was the cool party trick with EVs when they first came out. That amazing acceleration right when you hit the throttle. But a lot of people don't want to deal with that on a daily basis. They want it to feel more like a normal car. So they've definitely been, a lot of manufacturers kind of been tuning that back a little bit.
Yeah, and I think for the types of buyers that they're looking for, not necessarily people who want an EV but just want a car. This is how you can sell that. It drives very much like an internal combustion car when you have it on, when you're not using its one pedal driving mode.
Size wise, is it like ID4?
It's a little bit bigger.
A little bigger than ID4.
A little bit bigger. Right. It kind of is like in a weird size where, so it's a 5-seater. And that's also like the same where I always felt like the combustion Blazer kind of fit in between 2 sizes. It wasn't like it's smaller than an Equinox, it's larger than an Equinox, but it's obviously smaller than a Traverse, which was a 3-row. So the Blazer is even bigger than its internal combustion engine sibling. So it kind of fits into that more like premium offering of like a 5-seater. But it's got plenty of space in the rear seats. It's got plenty of space in the cargo area. It also drives like a car. I felt like it drove like a car. and very easy to get in and out of places. But it does have one pedal drive, which is the when you it has such
just
strong.
Just use one pedal?
Yeah, just one pedal. I know. I was
all
trying to I was like, should I explain this? But it's like basically you don't ever have to touch the brake because the regenerative braking is so strong on it, and it is really proper one pedal driving in like a very good way. I haven't driven a ton of like other GM related EVs. Brian, you might be able to speak on this a little bit better, but it felt like it was really strong, but it felt like it was engineered correctly for like your brain got used to it very quickly.
Yeah, they've been tuning on that stuff for a while. Like you mentioned, the Volt, going back to that one, extended range electric, and the Cadillac ELR. They were pretty ahead of the game as far as braking by wire. You in the ELR and the Lyric, you could even get a brake paddle on the steering wheel. You didn't have to use the brake pedal at all. So they've been tuning on that stuff for a while. They do have a very natural feel to the one pedal setup.
Yeah, pretty good. And the interior I thought was really nice. One thing that people are probably going to be a little bit disappointed of is there is no Apple CarPlay.
Yeah, isn't this the first one that GM's rolling that out on?
Yes. So it has Google. They have transitioned to the Google built-in system. So you have a really nice, like large, like 28 inches of display, which is great. But yeah, no Apple CarPlay. So for those who were wanting that in their next EV, you wouldn't be able to get it. But of course, it's it's all Google, so it's just otherwise it's pretty simple. I mean, you're gonna have to use the system anyway for like any route planning. You'd have to like type it in. You can't use Apple CarPlay for that. But I will say there were just a couple things where like you have to like toggle in the menus, and GM has been doing that where like if you wanted to change one pedal, you have to use the touchscreen to do that. Yeah. Which
Similar
I mean,
to Silverado, they do make it a little easier. There was like a drop down, like you could just easily do it. You can set it up in your favorites. They try to make it easy, but yeah, you do have to go menu diving in some fashion.
In the drive modes too, which I noticed. Like, and they just have a couple of drive modes. They just have like a normal, sport, and a snow and ice mode. And the sport, honestly, I put it into sport, and I didn't really feel that it did all that much of a difference. Maybe a little bit more power, but I would just keep it in normal mode. I kept it in normal mode the most of the time because it was just kind of a little bit of a hassle to change it. But of course, I'm only in the car for like a few hours, whereas some people, like Brian said, they do some things to make it much easier for those who are driving it all the time. But starting price is like around $50,000 for their base LT models, which have not shown up yet. There's going to be a front-wheel drive version with an 85 kilowatt-hour battery, so you're probably looking around 270, 80 miles of range, and that's kind of where that price point will be. I drove the RS all-wheel drive and the RS front-wheel drive, and those are just over $60,000. So,
well, I can get a Tesla Cybertruck for that.
I know, right? Yeah. So
another year, and it can be yours.
But yeah, overall, I mean, I thought it was a really solid offering from GM. But I think I'm honestly more looking forward to the upcoming Equinox EV, which will slot underneath this, still built on the LTM platform. But I think this is all good stuff from GM. I know they're a little bit behind, but they're playing catch up.
It's interesting, though. I mean, they were the first ones to say, we're going to be all electric by 2035. They came out way before anyone else with that. But yeah, actually seeing things on the road is... it's taken a while.
Yeah. Alex, did you have any comments on? Did you see how it looked?
A little bit. It's attractive enough. But I'm not really like you made the comment, like it's so much better than the regular internal combustion Blazer. Whereas to me, it's like, all right, it's another Blazer. I mean, like it looks good, but one of the cars of all time. Yeah. I mean, I'm just I think I'm a little surprised by the price, honestly.
Yeah.
I was a little, when you said 50 starting, that just feels a little too high for this, but also I'm not a bean counter. I don't know what all the, the cost and everything, like what it all adds up to. And you're saying, something else, the Equinox is in a slot below it. So, if the Equinox is there, gets introduced and it's below that 50,000 mark, that might be, It might just be it. Just trying to fill out all the segments, all the price points. So.
Yeah, I will say Equinox is supposed to start like just over $35,000.
Yeah, I mean that's an incredibly attractive price in my opinion for an EV right now, because I think one of the complaints we hear a lot about EVs is how expensive they
yeah,
are.
For sure.
So the cheaper they can make them, the better. But not cheaper like in quality, just in price.
Okay.
Thanks for your comments, guys.
That didn't work out too well for the Fiat 500e when that was here.
Hey,
Wait, it's coming back.
It's coming back.
It is coming
It's
back.
coming back.
Coming back.
That was like the cheapest one ever, and it didn't work out so well.
Well, it's not that cheaper, too much cheaper anymore, because it is like $35,000 now.
All right.
So maybe we've got some quality going up a little bit. We'll see when we have one in for testing. All right. Well, thank you, guys. Let's finish up with our last part of the show. Ooh. I know we've come to the end. Can you believe it?
I can, actually.
A rant or rave? Do either of you have a rant or a rave? Gotta have something.
I'm not a big ranter or raver.
I
mean, back in the day, maybe there were some raves going on, but I didn't bring my glow sticks.
Yeah.
Do you have something, Alex?
I had a rant, and I totally forgot what it is. And man, that's terrible, because I was thinking about it on the car ride in today, where I was... You know what? If I check my dash cam footage, you can probably hear me yelling about it. I thought of something and was like, oh, this is ridiculous. So I will get back to you on that.
Well, that's something we can explore. You have a dash cam.
I do. Okay, hey, I got a rave and a rant. It's a twofer.
Here we go.
All right, the rave is that dash cams are great. I love having one in my car. Fortunately, have not had to use it. This is table made of wood. Gonna knock on that real quick. Haven't had to use it yet for anything like major. I think it's great. My rant would be, we got all these cameras and sensors and everything in cars now. I want to see more integrated dash cams. Just something there.
Yeah, sure.
Because, like some manufacturers are doing it where you can option it when you build out the car to like okay, there's an accessory port up here, or there's something like it's plug and play. You can get a dash cam installed. I would like to, and it doesn't have to be standard. It could be an option. That's fine. But I'd like to see more dash cams, I think. I don't know what everyone else thinks about that, but I just think having a dash cam is great. I think it's a nice little feature. But you know what? It's also fun to install them yourself sometimes. So.
Yeah. I mean, I will say Tesla people there's so many cameras, built-in cameras onto Teslas, and they have so much control over when something happens to their car. I mean, goodness gracious, they can see if somebody has opened a door and, ding their car, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and I'm trying to be very careful of not crossing that Orwellian line into cameras everywhere. Normally I'm we don't need all that, but I don't know. I just think having a front-facing dash camera is a nice feature. I like having it. It'd be nice to see that as an option.
I mean, who doesn't love watching dash cam compilations on YouTube? I do love those.
I can't do that.
I do enjoy those every now and again. So it's a good point. Well, thanks, Alex. That was that was a good rant and rave.
I just pulled something out.
That's good. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening to our podcast today. If you're wondering what time MotorWeek can be seen on your local public television station, go to our website, motorweek.org, click on the tab that says Watch MotorWeek, and then enter your zip code for days and times in your area. Or hop on over to our cable partner, mavtv.com for their schedule. You can also stream MotorWeek episodes for free on your mobile device or streaming box by downloading the PBS app available on your device's app store or streaming channel library. That's actually really awesome. I think everybody should have the PBS app, because you don't just get MotorWeek, you also get all of our cool, awesome PBS programming, which is great.
Do I get Arthur?
I think you'd have to download the PBS Kids app for that one.
2 apps? Nah.
We got another rant coming up.
Yeah.
Great.
Also, all of the individual road tests and feature segments are also available on youtube.com/MotorWeek. If you have a screen, you can watch MotorWeek. Thank you to Brian and Alex here for participating on the podcast. I guess I'll give myself some kudos as being the podcast producer and also the host for today. Thank you to our audio engineer, Austin Harris, who makes us sound so good, and our podcast creator, Bob Mixter. I'm Jessica Ray. Thanks for being a part of MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.